ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end.
Right now, you probably heard this viral song that transcends all race, religion, and even political party. And if by some chance you've been living under the rock, the song is called Richmond, North of Richmond by Oliver Anthony.
I've been selling my soul, working all day, overtime hours for bullshit pay.
Now, the reason that this is so powerful, or regardless of which side of the aisle you stand on, we can all agree upon a few different things. We can all agree that we are seemingly working harder and harder for what seems to be less and less money. You might be making the most amount of money in dollars that you've ever had in your life, but it seems to be going less and less far. This, unfortunately, is the cold, hard reality of a society that is operating on money that is fundamentally broken. The money that many suffer and few benefit. You see, when he says,
Your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end.
there's more truth in this bar than you might even realize. Since 1971, the US dollar has lost 98% of its purchasing power. Why did I pick 1971? Well, that's simple. That's because when Richard Nixon took the US dollar off of the gold standard.
I have directed Secretary Connally to suspend temporarily the convertibility of the dollar into gold or other reserve assets, except in amounts and conditions determined to be in the interest of monetary stability and in the best interest of the United States.
Left us now what is called a fiat currency. Before 1971, our money was backed by gold. Today, it is backed by nothing more than the government saying, we got you. Now, don't worry about it. It's good. Is this the first fiat currency, you might be asking? No, there have been over 300 fiat currencies since ancient Egypt, and there have been 300 failed fiat currencies since ancient Egypt. So right now, the scoreboard would tell us it is 300 failed to 0 successes. Maybe this time it's different. But history, unfortunately, we're down 300-0.
'Cause your dollar ain't shit, and it's taxed to no end. 'Cause the rich men, 'cause the rich men.
Even worse than that, while the US dollar purchasing power has just been free falling like a sinking ship, the bump in pay raises are simply not matching the declining dollar. The topic of discussion for many years has been minimum wage increase. Unfortunately, the minimum wage increase is nothing more than the leaves of the problem and not the root cause of the problem. The root cause of this problem is simply nothing more than the inflation number that we are given is not real. What do I mean by that? Most people, when working in a job, get a yearly increase based on the inflation that has been reported. Let's say, for simple math, you make $100 and inflation last year was 10%. Well, now you get a 10% bump in pay raise, giving you $110. Great, right? Except last year you were going to the grocery store and paying, say, $20 for food, but now you're spending $40 for food, and you only got a $10 pay raise. That's a negative loss of $30. But how could this be? They measure inflation. This is how they measure inflation, my friends. Let's say what they're measuring is for sugar. Let's say last year sugar increased by 20%. Well, inflation for sugar should just be 20%, right? Wrong. How they actually measure inflation for sugar in this scenario was if sugar went up by 20%, but stevia, a substitute for sugar, only went up by 5%. Well, in the government's eyes, inflation for sugar is now 5% because you have a substitute. And that is not real, but unfortunately, that is what you are paid for inflation. And you see what the problem might be, especially over decades of doing this very thing. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, inflation is nothing more than a tax on the poor and middle class. Make no mistake about it.
I wish politicians would look out for miners, and not just miners on an island somewhere low.
All of these deep-rooted fundamental problems are all from the same source, and that is the US dollar is fundamentally broken. And all of these problems that I've outlined in this video that we all commonly share are all how what and why Bitcoin was created in the first place. Well, you might be saying, well, what is Bitcoin even backed by? I'll ask you, what is the US dollar backed by? Well, at least the US dollar is physical, you might be saying. That's going away. That piece of paper is going away. At least with Bitcoin, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. Last year alone, the United States government printed $7 trillion. Well, I just don't get it, you might be saying. Let me ask you. Do you get how there's a giant piece of metal in the sky transmitting a signal to your phone and you're watching this magic internet man on this piece of computer? Do you get all of that? Or do you just understand that it's more efficient than a pen and paper? Or how about that car that you take to work every day? Can you explain to me how the electrical system, the fuel system, can you explain to me how there's an engine with micro combustions that go suck, squeeze, bang, blow, and down the road you go? Or do you just understand it's more efficient than a horse and buggy? You see, the US dollar is to a letter as Bitcoin is to email. The US dollar is to horse and buggy as Bitcoin is to a car. All of these deep-rooted core issues that affect people like me and people like you, Bitcoin fixes all of them. And if you want to learn more, follow me for more, you savages.